again. This is Senator Harriet Chandler of the 1st Worcester District, and this is Beacon Hill Chat, the show that brings you interesting people talking about some of the interesting things going on right here in Worcester. And our guest today certainly fits that category. He's Ray Mariano, who's the Executive Director of the Worcester Housing Authority. He's an old friend of mine. He served as mayor of the city of Worcester, so he's an old friend of yours too. But he's doing some remarkable things in his newest job. And so we welcome you, Ray, and we want to hear about some of the new things you're doing. Okay. So let's see, how long have you been with the Worcester Housing Authority?
A little over 10 years.
Has it been that long?
It's been that long.
Wow. And before that, you were a longtime member of the City Council, longtime mayor, and did some very innovative things as mayor of the city of Worcester. Youth at Risk was one of the programs that I certainly identify with you. Yeah. And it made a difference for our young people, and it's somewhat still carried on. And so when you went to the Housing Authority, knowing not that much about housing, but enough since you lived in housing, there was no doubt in my mind that you'd be a spectacular housing director. I don't mean to keep using superlatives, but that's the only thing I can find to use because they fit. So tell me about, how did it begin? You're the housing director, which means what?
Well, the executive director of the Housing Authority is responsible for the day-to-day operation of the Housing Authority, much like a city manager is responsible for the day-to-day operation of the city of Worcester. I report to a board of commissioners. They're my boss in the same way that the city council is the city manager's boss. We have 3,000 apartments in 24 properties all across the city, west side, east side, north end, south end. We have 3,000 apartments that we lease from 1,000 different property owners in and around Worcester.
So that's 3,000 plus 3,000, is
3,000 plus 3,000.
All right.
3,000 that we lease. And we probably have somewhere in the vicinity of 15,000 people that live with us in one way or another. Now we have families who are 4th and 5th generation residents of public housing. Along the way, the nature of public housing changed, and it had a negative impact, in my opinion, on the people who live there. It became too comfortable. It became too easy. And we now have 4 or 5 generations of the same family living in public housing. In fact, right now in one development, we have 4 generations of the same family today living in the same development. It's an incredible situation. It shouldn't be that way. If you ask one of my family members, particularly my sisters, about public housing, they'll change the subject. They're uncomfortable that they lived in public housing. And my view is that that's not a bad thing. I think it's okay that people are a little bit uncomfortable being in public housing. Public housing is a benefit that you need. You take it, and then when you're done with it, you go away and go do something else. In our case, we were pretty lucky, and we've done some pretty good things. Today, what exists in public housing wouldn't be allowed or tolerated anywhere else. In the last presidential election, the unemployment rate was about 8%.
Right.
And if it ever went to 10%, the president loses. No chance to winning with a 10% unemployment. Unemployment in public housing is 80%. That's 8 with a 0 after it, not a 0 in front of it. You wouldn't tolerate that in any other neighborhood, in any other setting. We have about 40% of our people over 18 who don't even have a GED. Some of the young people who live with us are more likely to know someone who's been to prison or been arrested than know someone with a 4-year college degree. That isn't the way it ought to be. In a country as rich as ours, as successful as ours, we need to look at what public housing is doing, why we've done it, and see if we can make some changes. We have a program we put in place. It's called A Better Life. We got a grant, a very generous grant from the Health Foundation. And Jan Yost, who is the president of the Health Foundation, is about as effective a partner as anyone will ever find with a grant. Generally, they give you a grant and then they wave at you and you give them a report back.
She's a partner.
She's a partner. She's in your office. She's taking notes. She's making phone calls on your behalf. She's asking questions. And we studied what we wanted to do. And essentially, our long-term goal was to require people to go to school or go to work or both or provide community service as a part of getting their public benefit, getting public housing. We initiated a voluntary version of the program, which means that people had to raise their hand. We said, okay, here's the program, and if you're interested, raise your hand. We have about 1,500 families that would be eligible for the program. We couldn't get 30 people to raise their hands, 30 families to raise their hands. Eventually, we got to 30. And what we said was, here's what we'll do. We'll start with intensive case management. If you have health issues in your family, we'll figure them out, we'll help you solve them. We'll make sure you have a primary care physician. If you need a dentist, we'll make sure we find you a dentist. If you have family problems, there's an abuse situation, the child needs counseling because there are behavioral issues, we'll help you find all of those things. The biggest need for all of our residents, every single one of them, is that they don't know where to go when they have a problem, so they stop. Okay, so we said, okay, we're going to do all these things, and what you will do is you'll agree to go to school or go to work full-time, and if you can't do one of those two things because you can't find a job, you'll provide community service. The next step of the program, and we were successful in terms of providing the service, but we were very unsuccessful in terms of getting people to sign up. No one wanted to do it. Well, it was too hard. So we said, okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to say, we're going to give you the biggest carrot of all. We're going to say that if you're on the waiting list, you can jump to the top of the waiting list, the very top. Now, our waiting list is 2, 3, 4 years long, depending on the size of the apartment that you need. You'll jump to the very top of the waiting list. We sent out 559 letters explaining the program to people in these categories. 559 letters. We got back probably 139 people who had an initial question. Ultimately, about 1 in 10 people have signed up or will sign up for the program. 1 in 10. The rest of them said, yeah, I'll wait. I know I've got 2 more years to wait.
So the people that you are signing up for the program are going to be new residents of public housing.
They're new residents of public housing, Harley, and they sign on the dotted line that says, I am now required to do all the things in your program. And if I don't, I lose my apartment. And so we're just now enrolling people. We've got about 7 or 8 families that we've just enrolled. The federal government will give us permission to enroll 100 families, to give them a preference, to skip them ahead of the line. What was disheartening for us is that the vast majority of people said, yeah, never mind, I don't want to do this. It's too much work. And I think that that's wrong. Now, because of you, we're going to have the opportunity on the state side as well. You brought us into the Senate President's office. Senate President included us because of your advocacy in her welfare reform legislation.
Which was just done last night in the Senate. We're hoping to hold on to it in conference, and it's the major welfare reform that's coming out this year. And you are the only program, project, that is in there in toto.
Here's what we know. We know, and I can give you, and I will give you some examples. We know that we can change people's lives, and we can do a great job at this. We know that. We also know the flip side of that is, if we don't force people to do it, they won't do it. We have parts of our program are interesting. For example, our rent is based on income. So Harley Chandler is not working, and her rent is $100 a month. Not very high. Now she goes to work, she gets a job, her income goes way up, and her rent is now going to be $600 a month. Well, she says, why am I paying you an extra $500 when you take out taxes and then I lose? Our program has 2 options. Option 1 is called income disregard. For the first year, we don't count your income. You still pay $100. Second year, we only count half of it. Third year, you pay everything.
So you're building up assets in that period of time.
The better way to do it is called escrow. We take the difference between the 100 and the 600. You pay us 600. We take $500, we put it in the bank for you. And we put it in the bank for you every month for 5 years. So as your income goes up, the difference goes in the bank. We've got a guy who's walking out now with $20,000. He's buying his first house. Now, it's a very modest home. He's so darn excited.
But it's his.
It's his house.
And he paid for it himself with the savings that you allowed for it.
Incredible thing. I said once, and the saying kind of stuck because a reporter wrote it, I didn't take the job to fix the windows and the doors. You could hire anybody to go do that. I took the job because I thought
You could change people's lives.
I could change their lives. And what we did as a result of this grant, and Jan Yost and the Health Foundation deserve credit for this, is we've changed a whole range of programs at the Housing Authority to try to change lives. We have a special program now. I can't imagine another housing authority anywhere in this region that has one, where we take people who have substance abuse issues, who've gone through a treatment program. Right. We partnered with Crozier House, which is Catholic Charities, and they get aftercare. These guys are required to go to work every single day, and they do. They're required to take urine samples every single month.
And they do.
And they do, and they're model residents. They wouldn't normally get into public housing because they've got a background where they've been arrested. Right. Or other things. But through this program and all these other programs, we have a series of apprentice programs, all spin around this better life concept. And the idea is to take people who need help, provide them with all the service that you can. There's only one requirement. They got to work with you. They've got to do the hard work. And if they'll do it, Harley, if they'll do it, many of them will be successful. The next step, what we want to do, is not to provide a preference, but to make it a requirement for everyone who goes into public housing. That's statutorily what we need at the state to do.
But Ray, you and I both know that this is a pilot.
Yes, it is.
It's being viewed by the Senate President as a pilot. The other program that was being considered was not included. You're the only program that's included. And if it works, and we know it will work because you've been doing it for a year, you've got some really good data to show that it will work, and you understand how it must be conceived in order to make it work well. But if it does work, that will become replicable in other housing authorities throughout the state. And when that happens, then it will become, hopefully, a requirement for every authority. So instead of housing executive directors being charged with all kinds of terrible things, what we have with you is somebody who really cares about the people he works with and has done. I mean, this isn't the first thing that you've come, the first incredible innovation you've come up with. This is, I mean, way down the road now. You know that the first things worked, and you tried and you grew them, and they worked well. So we have only to say that in the next year, we're hopefully going to hear more from you. I want to see this thing develop. I want to see a better life become truly a better life for all the people that you work with in public housing in Worcester. Thank you so much for coming.
My great pleasure.
And we really appreciated hearing from you. And members of the viewing public, keep your eyes on what's going on in the Worcester Housing Authority, because you're going to see a really important innovation occur that will change the lives of people in need who are going to get a hand up, not a hand out. It will be done with a certain sense of generosity and compassion, but it will be done understanding the people that Ray is working with and doing the best possible job. Thank you for joining us this week, and hope to see you again next week. Goodbye for now. This is Harriet Chandler saying goodbye for Beacon Hill Chat.